Hey everybody, Arbiter617 here from Black Knight Studios, bringing you another Minecraft animation tip video using Blender. In this video I'll be showing you how to do some kind of destruction, not so much explosions, but more of the things you might have seen in Mystery Warfare, or briefly in Animation Life, actually also in the original Sky Wars, where we're kind of going to be moving blocks around and having them get kind of crumbling apart, but still retaining the block form. This is not going to be the fracture thing I used in Animation Life, so keep that in mind. Also, this was a tip suggested by Zyler, one of our Emerald patrons. Be sure to check out our Patreon in the description below for all sorts of neat rewards. So, the first thing I'll be showing you is more of the kind of ground slam thing, because we'll want to be working up from there to do the, the buildings falling apart. So, in Mystery Warfare, there was a scene where, he jumped and he lands and he kind of smashes the ground and it kind of cracks around him. And it really just helps make things feel a little more intense. If you want to have something land and really break, you can do this trick. And this is kind of a starter to what we're going to be doing next. So let's say I want to smash the ground here. The first thing you're going to do is, find the blocks that we're going to want to... let me also turn on my screencast keys real quick. So I'm going to turn on the screencast keys. Now you can see which key I'm pressing in the bottom left. So the first thing you want to do is just, delete some kind of faces. And I usually kind of delete them in some kind of shape that looks a little bit like an actual crack kind of working its way outwards. Now we're going to go to the other stone. Maybe we're going to, unfortunately it's a few different block types. Maybe I'll break one more over here. And maybe break this last cobblestone. So now we've kind of created, if you can see a little bit better like that, we've created just a kind of thing that we're going to use to break. Simple enough. And then you're probably already thinking, what to do next. If you understand this, this first part's pretty simple. So if you understand this, you might want to skip ahead until we actually start using some physics. So I'm going to bring in some stone bricks, and some cobblestone. We're going to bring it on over. Also, it looks like it put them all in a different layer, so I didn't do the active layer thing like I mentioned. I always forget. Also, one little thing you'll note is actually whenever you bring things in, they all need to be rotated by -90. See how the textures don't line up with the worlds? That's just a thing with whatchamacallit. Oh, okay, now we also need to snap it to the vertices. Got one, got two. Just need to snap it to any vertice, honestly. And now we can snap it to increments. So we're just gonna start kind of recreating the little, the thing on here. And I'm actually gonna recreate it up in the air at first. That way I can kind of see through it. Anyway, so let's say we want this thing to crumble. I'm not even going to animate a person landing, but let's say a character lands at like 40 frames and smashes it down. The destruction is literally as simple as this. It's, we have everything already lined up, so I'm just going to grab all these objects that we want to move, and, oops, fudge. And just double check to make sure you grabbed everything, and see, it's a good thing I double checked because now the water's moving. Also, I missed some of these, so now I just got to uncheck the water. There we go. Now we're good. So at frame 40 we want them to start moving. So we're going to move them all down. So now we have all the first keyframe. We don't have it set. Why did I not set the keyframe? That's weird. Even though auto keyframe is on. We'll just press I to keyframe them all. And then now we're just going to go forward a few frames and just kind of like rotate things and move them down a little bit. And this is where it gets a little tricky because you got to kind of find out where the things are. You can actually, sometimes if you go underground, you can see them a little better. So now I've kind of taken them and all broken up a little bit, but the problem you'll notice is that, it opens up all these holes, and that's as simple as just taking something like, okay, we got the stone, so we're going to need to find, the flat surface of some stone somewhere, that's, sideways. You just go on the map, here's one right there. So I'm going to duplicate one up, hold down Control, so it still stays in line. And what you're going to want to do is just start kind of patching up all these edges using, duplicated stone or stone brick, depending on the thing. Here's another one. That one over there. Both of these actually. 1, 2. Same thing with the stone brick. Let's actually go do some stone brick. I actually grabbed some stone brick from over here. Let's bring it on over. Still holding Control for all this. And as you can see, I'm just kind of patching up all these little walls. And if I were to spend more time on these, I would do all of them. But for now, I'm probably actually just going to leave it at that. Maybe just patch 1 or 2 more up. Actually, no, I won't. Never mind. So there's like the basic idea for the general destruction. So the next thing I would usually do is we don't want this to all happen at the same time. So if we go into animation, go back to the scene, and I pretty much always have this little isolate select thing open. So if I have that isolate select, we kind of start clicking on all these. Or actually, you don't even need to click on all of them. Just click on a few. Click on this one, and if we zoom in on the timeline, and what we want to do is we just kind of want to offset some. So we're going to grab these, maybe pull them to the right a little bit. Grab these, pull them to the right a lot. We kind of want the stuff the further away should be a little more delayed because it's like further out, so it kind of works its way away from like the center. So now you kind of see, you get an idea. Imagine someone landing there and you see a little kung and kind of breaks. Obviously you have to patch the rest of these up, but that's the basics of getting the you know, things destroying. So then to step it up from there, the next step is just doing the same thing, but rather than animating these, we're going to be using physics. So let's say we wanted like the mystery vault to explode or an island to break apart. The first step would be the same. You would go into the faces, you would delete the faces, and you would replace them using individual blocks. Okay, so for the purpose of this tutorial, I didn't really feel like taking the time to actually, you know, blockify any of the real stuff, because it can take a pretty good amount of time to set this up. If I wanted to, you know, turn this into blocks, I would have to bring in stairs, I'd have to bring in the andesite, I'd have to bring in the nether brick, both the stairs, slabs, and blocks. And it takes a lot of setup and kind of deleting things one at a time. When I did the mystery vault, I had to basically rebuild this whole thing. It definitely took well over an hour or two just to set up the blocks. So it didn't really make any sense for me to be doing that right now. It'd just take too much time. So I just set up some very simple stone thing. We're just going to be destroying this. So pretend something's going to come up and break this. So we have our stalagmite thing on the ground. We want maybe like, you know, dragon gets thrown into it. We want to smash this stalagmite. So the way to do that is now, rather than, you know, keyframing this, we want this to actually break apart and fall on the ground. Let me actually, I just want to delete those keyframes down there. Those things are kind of bothering me now. Let's delete all these keyframes. I don't want those things moving around. Anyway, let's go back to default. And if we go to, there's actually a few ways to access this. Let's go to this little physics tab, and if we change it to rigid body, by default we see it turns green. I would also then move these. I would always move all of your stuff that's going to get like thrown around, move it to a whole different layer. So let's move it maybe to like layer 5. I'm probably also going to do the same for the rest of the stone. Alright, so now we separate the stalactite onto a separate layer. And again, we have the first one on physics, and I could go around, you know, putting physics, but what you can do a little more simply, if we just isolate this layer, we grab all these things, and the active object is the one that has the light blue center. If we go to, I believe it's under physics, we can do copy from active, so we will copy the physics of all of those different things. Actually, okay, let's do this. I press play. We're going to see, okay, they must be rigid because they're falling. They're just kind of falling to the ground. So the next thing we're going to want is a collider. So I'm going to go mesh, we're going to add plane, and we're going to just kind of create some big kind of plane under them. And we move it just under the world just a tiny bit. Make sure all the stuff you're going to be working with the physics is on the same layer. So make sure this collider is also on layer 5. And then we're going to change it to, I think it's actually rigid body, which seems, which doesn't seem right. I think I'm pretty sure collision is actually about particle collision. Anyway, so yeah, I think so we're going to have rigid body. Oh, right. So we're going to change it from active to passive, because this rigid body is not going to be moving. It's literally just going to sit here and, you know, work as our little catcher. So if I hit play now, you'll see it'll fall, and it'll kind of shake around. Now it's kind of like go up, it's tipping around, so that's weird. So we don't want that. We don't want it all moving around. So there's a few things we can do, and I'll show you the first thing, but then I'll also show you why it doesn't quite work. If we go back to this thing, there was an option for enable deactivation and also start deactivated. So if that means at the beginning it won't be it won't start being physically driven until something like smashes into it. However, if we let me kind of grab that. That's the active one. If we now copy that from the active, so now all of them start deactivated. If I press play, this time it worked. Okay, cool. Well, if that works, then that works. A lot of the times, you'll notice even if you say it's start deactivated, you'll actually see it'll actually start out kind of smashing away because all the colliders think they're inside each other and they kind of get thrown around. Or sometimes they'll just kind of go falling to the floor. That's a little strange. I'm surprised that it actually is working right now. Okay, well that's good. We can kind of move on. I'll show you the other trick in a moment because we'll probably have that problem anyway. So the next thing, of course, you're going to want is something to smash it. And there's a few things we can use. We can go Shift A. We can add any of these force fields. If you want to put like a force field right here, and then you can keyframe the strength. Let's do that real quick. Let's go to like frame 20. And then we're going to say the strength will jump up to like 500. Keyframe it, then kind of go back down to 0. Keyframe it, and make sure the field is on layer 5. This is really like a common mistake I have at the beginning. I forget all the things have to be on the same layer, otherwise they won't be affected. We press play. It should get thrown. It doesn't, so we have something wrong. One thing we can do is this scene setting. This is whenever I'm actually working with physics, you'll be using this scene setting a lot. We want to go into our where is it? Here we go. Rigid body cache. Make sure the end and start frame are correct. For instance, if you want this if you want this to get crumbled at frame 500, you have to make sure this, goes to like frame, 700 so you can have it finish. For us, we're only going like 100, but you want it to, include everything in the animation or what you need. So let's hit bake. Now we're going to bake it. And now if we play it, we still see nothing happens. Maybe this thing is not strong enough. Maybe it's just the deactivation, not sure what. We can try putting on maybe putting on a little bit of noise. Maybe put on a maximum radius. Make sure the radius includes it. And then we can try baking it again. I usually just keep free bake it. We use that to, oh, this time it kind of worked. Okay, so, okay, this is what I was expecting to happen. It starts out, it plops down, then we have the force that moves it, but again, it's not moving it very much. Sometimes the forces have to be very strong. Let's turn the physics up to, when it throws it, let's turn that up to like 2,000. Or maybe let's go 4,000. What? Okay, let me just turn on auto keyframe. 4,000. So now if I bake the physics again, we always have to rebake when we have something baked. We'll see they drop, and then boom, it blows it out. So there we go. We're already starting to get getting the kind of stuff you want. We're getting destruction. Let's scale this up a lot. And at the very end of this tutorial, I'll actually show you the Mystery Warfare scene, because that was definitely my best destruction sequence I've ever done. Had a lot of interesting things to it. So that we get it blown up and the pieces fly out and kind of go crumbling along. And you see they came to a frozen stop. So what we're going to want to do is, of course, make the bake a lot longer. Anyway, let's start looking at some of these problems. The thing we see, of course, first of all, is they start out and they boop, drop. And here's the thing, I'm not quite sure if anyone knows the answer to this, let me know. The problem I have is that, okay, we set them to be start deactivated and only activate once a force is activated upon them. However, gravity is a force. So even if you have it start deactivated, you press play, the gravity is always going to affect it right away anyway. So the solution I have found is to go into the scene settings and go right to where you want the explosion to happen. This only really works, I guess, if you have one explosion. So frame 21, right at frame 21 in the scene setting, let's go to, where is it, gravity. We're going to keyframe the gravity force, go back a frame right before it starts. We're going to set it to 0 and keyframe it. That way, so we're only going to turn on gravity right when the explosion happens. Let's bake it again. And this way, you'll see, now it's baked, it's holding still, then boom, it gets exploded, and everything goes crumbling down. So that's pretty much what we want. We might actually want, let's pretend this thing kind of actually got more like that. That'd probably be, I also might even bring that down a bit. There's not really much variety going on. Let's bake it again. There we go. So that's a pretty cool explosion right there. We've got, you know, imagine like a big dragon smashing into that right in the middle. Collides, kind of things bounce around. The other way you can have things get like smashed rather than using fields, if you find that fields just kind of aren't working for you, or if they're just, you know, throwing everything all around at once, the other thing I use in a lot of my, you know, animations is something just like a collider, and you animate it. So let's create a mesh. We're gonna add a icososphere. I like icosospheres just because they have not a lot of nice kind of surface to use. Let's take something like this, and let's say, okay, right around here, we're gonna just keyframe it. I'm gonna keyframe it to go quickly through and out the other side. That should be pretty good. Let me also bake. But anyway, so we're gonna create this thing to go through it, and then we're gonna change this to the rigid body. It's going to be passive, but it's going to be animated. I'm not sure why these are getting flown over. And then we're here, we're gonna have to actually still go back and clear the keyframes on the gravity, and we'll have to go back and put gravity kind of at the right time again. Let me free the bake, and I'm not sure why everything is getting... Let me do free all bakes. There we go. That's a little more what we expect. That also looks like I kind of missed. It kind of... Yeah. Kind of worked. Could make it a little bigger, honestly. There we go. Now we got it really smashing through it. So now we've kind of got the right idea. That looks pretty good. The problem is... Oh, it's okay. Now it went back to not doing the little thing where it stops at the beginning. See, that's what's weird. Sometimes the beginning, you'll bake it and it will, you know, drop down. Other times it doesn't. I'm never sure when it decides to do one and when it decides to do the other. So here it decided to not. Assuming it did, we just keyframe the gravity, you know, here to turn back on. Like right out here, we turn gravity on so things will get smashed down. Then of course the last thing is obviously you don't want, you know, a giant ball flying through it. You want a dragon flying through it. However, you'll notice, well, you won't notice, but you're about to notice when I start looking at some scenes, is that when I have things smashing through things, a lot of times I don't use the actual object as a collider. I'll create a custom collider so that things will bounce off better. If you try to use an actual object as a collider, sometimes you get all these weird kind of angles that things get thrown around at weird angles. Icosospheres work nicely. You can just go in the outliner, set the icososphere not to render, and if you don't like this big blob in the viewport, you go to the object settings and display it as wired. And now in wired it looks a little better, so you can just kind of smash that through stuff. So let's kind of finish this tutorial up. Let me actually look at some of our previous animations where I did this. Okay, so here is the original Skywars scene where I first used this kind of destruction stuff, and surprisingly I haven't really changed my principles too much since then. So let's kind of look back through it, and as you can see, you know, I kind of recreated the island using blocks. Also, what you may not have noticed is I actually was a little cheaper with it. I didn't even build the whole island. Let me turn this thing to a wire. I didn't know about the wire thing. Change it to wire. You can see the island's actually hollow because I got a little bit lazy duplicating things, so I only kind of did like the front faces, so it looks like an island. But they're all individual blocks. If we look at the scene, we'll see gravity's off. Gravity's off so they're not falling. And right when it starts smashing them, as they start kind of getting thrown around, gravity turns on. And you can actually see, you know, gravity is actually not on right now. It's very, very slow. These things are just getting kind of pushed. Right about now, gravity turns on, everything falls down. I actually never actually turned gravity all the way up. But let's look at it kind of... I think this time I actually did use the dragon. Yes, I did. The dragon actually is a collider in this time. He's an animated active collider. I don't know why it chose active versus passive. I'm trying to determine what this is. I think this is actually a particle emitter. Yeah, this is a particle emitter that's putting out kind of some... Oh yeah, you can see all these... Okay, then that's why I had it not as wire. If we see... Yeah, I put little like stone particles. I made this little stone particle, and there's a whole bunch of those get kind of thrown out right when everything breaks. You kind of want some small stuff breaking out and kind of shattering as that's happening. I actually even did some cool stuff where I created this emitter here for the snow. As you can see, it's like I took all the areas where there's snow on like the trees, snow on the islands, and right when it gets hit, a bunch of snow kind of gets thrown off it. Actually, I think there was even no, I didn't do it, but yeah, so I had like the snow particles get knocked off. This tree was actually hand animated because I wanted it to kind of behave more the way I wanted it, so I have it kind of like get knocked and then kind of linger and then kind of fall. Also this big chunk here, I think, yeah, this was also like this wall I wanted to kind of stay as one piece, so I kind of had it get thrown up and kind of fall back the way I wanted it. But that was that. So here's where I was talking about where I had to use a different collider. I tried using the dragon to break these things. This was actually the first place I used destruction. This was like my little mini test of whether or not I could destroy things. So I just tried it out with just, you know, a few blocks in this shot before finding out it worked. So I used it for the whole island a moment later. This was kind of my test. But one thing you might not see, I think I have it hidden, is the dragon was not the collider. I have a, if I go check icosphere, I'm sure there's gonna be, yep, here we go, the dragon collider. If I unhide it, I have this, this was actually what I was using to break it. It wasn't the dragon. Right when the dragon comes, I just had this thing kind of push through and knock those blocks. And that's what I mean about sometimes it helps to do that. And I even actually, you can see where I kind of modeled it and shaped it a little differently. It's not a perfect sphere anymore. I kind of mushed it because I wanted the blocks to kind of fly out nicely. I think when I did it at first, the dragon head sent one flying and everything else just went like flipping up in the air from the wings and it didn't behave right. So you can use things like this to your advantage. And finally, we will end with the mystery warfare scene, because this is where I took that effect to a whole new level. I really wanted to show this intense moment of him breaking out of the vault. Everything kind of gets destroyed. So I rebuilt this whole vault. I rebuilt all the blocks underneath and around. I opened up this big hole down here and just kind of recreated all this stuff, so all these things could get kind of flung out of the ground. If we check our physics, we will see that the gravity is off. And gravity actually stays off. Right here it starts turning on, and then it slowly works its way on. You can see how things are starting to finally fall now, and then right when the main explosion goes off, gravity's fully on. That way the explosion kind of looks normal. Here is a little more fortunate, because I could actually kind of leave gravity off and it looked normal. So the first thing, the reason that caused it to bulge up is I believe I had a, let's see, yeah, I created this weird blob. This was also just an icosphere that I kind of morphed it and made it look weird. It's got a rigid body on it. This one was active, animated, and dynamic. I don't know what all that means, but that's what it was. And you can see it, whoops, okay, now I messed it up. But this was just like a blob that pushes it up from below. I think it even kind of stops. I think at first it just comes up and gives it a nudge. Yeah, and you can see it stops right here. It comes up, gives it a nudge, just enough to kind of give that initial, everything kind of quaking outwards. Then it stops, waits a moment, and then right here between these few frames, it jerks upwards and throws everything upwards. I also have little particle emissions kind of coming out. Also on top of that, I believe I did stuff with vortex and other types of fields. I used the vortex field to kind of make it, you can see right around here, I turned on the vortex. You can see it kind of twists inwards a little bit right at the end. And then I think here I used both the collider and a force field to push everything out. Also, a cool trick I did with the collisions is, okay, I wanted all this stuff to land on the ground, but I couldn't just put the collider here at first, because everything was like clipping into it and causing problems. So what I actually did, I ended up kind of grouping a bunch of these objects together, just the leaves, the concrete, the walls, the wood, and I created a whole second replica of this whole area, and then I grouped that together and set that as a collider. That way we have a perfect collision, so I didn't have to go remodel my whole collider. I could have done it more efficiently if I kind of modeled, but this saves a whole lot of time. I just had a perfect recreation, And what I did is I just animated that to kind of, starts out, it's actually down below where it's not going to get in the way. It's like way down in the world. And once the explosion goes off, it just kind of moves up into place. You can see it kind of moving up. That way when everything flies up, you know, even if it gets pushed up with that, that's okay, as it's blowing up anyway. Now it moves into place. So now everything will actually react very, very realistically if things hit the you know, the little benches or the stairs down here, it will actually react nicely. I also had particles blowing up smaller little bits of debris. Looks like I have some sort of, what was this? What is that? Is that wind? I had a wind emitter. I think I was trying to make oh, that's right. I had a wind emitter that gets keyframed right when it blows off. I have the wind blowing it that way because I wanted that cool shot where all the debris kind of goes flying along here. I think Aqua jumps right. We have that explosion. Yeah, everything's kind of going. Oh, I wonder if you could see him in that shot, just standing there. I never noticed that. I want to go back and watch Mystery Warfare after this. I wanted this shot, yeah, right here, everything's kind of falling, he jumps, everything's kind of landing around him. So I wanted everything to kind of blow out that way. But, you know, that's it. That's destruction. There's not much more beyond that. Some of these other things were just particles. A lot of it just is about recreating things with blocks. Again, the main things to learn is to, you can keyframe gravity, so you can have gravity start later if you don't want things to shift at the beginning. Make sure to use cache, like, constantly, and set it to what you need it. So it says, you know, right here I have it start right at 125. I didn't need it till right here, then everything starts kind of shifting and doing stuff. Play with camera shake to get cool effects when things get destroyed. You really use camera shake. Not actually sure what caused some, see how some of these kind of flew out around the edge. I think that had to go back with the weird shape I made. I just kind of play around. Sometimes you just get lucky and have cool things happen. So gravity's kind of off. Oh, that was one thing you might be wondering, is that there's one field somewhere around here. Let me check all my fields and check them. This is that's the vortex. Turbulence, it has some turbulence, everything gets kind of just shooken around randomly. Yeah, and this was the field I had that was a force field. So as you can see at the beginning right here, it kind of pushes, no, right here actually it's sucking things in. It goes to -6. Then it gets to -8, so it's really kind of pulling things towards it, then goes to like +40, and throws everything out, and then goes back down. So I use a negative field to get that cool kind of like, sucks in, boom, then blows out. So that was that. More turbulence. I think some of these turbulence I think were more for particles. Everything's kind of on different layers. I have a, you know, a layer. This must have been the, I don't know what this was. Looks like I missed some layers. I wasn't. So here's the. Oh, and I also had some custom keyframe things. These were just more custom blocks that I just kind of keyframed to make them look like they were flying out. They don't even look that great, but in that shot you can see these kind of big chunks flying up. Here's the particle one of a bunch of dusty particles. Here's like the ender particles. Here we got the main stuff, the big junk. This is where you can really start seeing all the That's really interesting. It's interesting to see it like that. And then here I have, oh, the volumetric. I had some volumetric lighting stuff for this. But I think that's about it. So, hope you learned a little bit about destruction. If you want to go blow up your world or a little scene, go for it now. Not sure why some of these are in the wrong layer. But, might have just been a little mistake. But, thanks for watching, and I'll get to the next tutorial as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please be sure to leave a like and a comment. It's kind of hard to tell how many people are actually watching and using these things, so let me know if you do. And I'll see you next tutorial. Adios.